Welcome to Master the Book. My name is John Guydon, and here's what I learned from The Language of Trust: selling ideas in a world of skeptics. We are skeptical about, well, everything. We're more savvy consumers these days. We don't just listen to anybody who stands up in a suit and claims to have the best product or claims to have the best idea. This is what they call the post-trust era. So, before you do anything, you have to engage people. The first piece is to know their truth. Two parts to understanding their truth is, first, you have to understand who they are. Once you have a really good understanding of who you're actually talking to, then, and only then, you can see the world from their perspective. That's the first piece. Once you have that piece down, then you're ready to move on to finding common ground. Now, let's say I think we should build buildings on the west side of town, and somebody else thinks they should build buildings on the east side of town. But the idea is that we both agree that we need to have buildings built. There's the common ground. And the final piece of engagement is ask questions. You have to get them talking. You want to understand their perspective. You want to ask meaningful, thoughtful questions. You don't want to ask leading questions like, don't you think it's incredibly irresponsible for people to put buildings on the west side of town knowing that the sun rises in... Wait a minute, you're just pushing your agenda. That's a leading question. Another question that you don't want to ask is a throwaway question. The most common throwaway question is, hey, how you doing? Do you really care how I'm doing? Or are you just saying that to fill space? Like you're required to ask me how I'm doing. But if you don't really care about the answer, then don't ask me the question. What if I told you that buildings on the west side of town were just as effective, if not more, than buildings on the east side of town? Huh? Like, no, that's a hypothetical question. They're annoying, and people know exactly what you're trying to do. Okay, once we've established engagement, the next principle is theirs before yours. The Japanese martial art of Aikido stands in complete opposition to how most people view combat. It teaches followers to flow with the rhythm of their opponent instead of resisting them. By harnessing the opponent's energy, the fighter gains maximum power and leverage to bring a physical conflict to an end. We should be thinking like Aikido when it comes to these conversations that we're having. You don't want somebody to feel like they're your adversary early on in a conversation. You really don't want conflict. One of the ways this is shown in selling is with objections. Just look on YouTube or look online. There's all sorts of articles and books about overcoming objections. Well, that's becoming more and more ineffective. The better way to handle that in the post-trust era, in a world of skeptics, is to validate objections. Once you validate their concerns, they feel like they might have an advocate now instead of an adversary. That's what you want. That's a good way to build credibility. Let's take an example of a customer that has been buying the same premium brand of luggage for over 10 years. And they come in and they see that some of the parts that used to be steel are now plastic, and they are upset. They're not happy
about this.
How do you handle that? The Aikido style of handling that situation would go something like this. You know, I've been selling this brand of luggage for over 12 years now. And when I discovered that they replaced these parts, I was concerned too. So I wrote the company, and here's the response I got. That salesperson, they didn't put themselves at risk for not getting the sale. That person appreciates the honesty, the sincerity, the transparency that the salesperson gave when they said, hey, I didn't like it either. You're curbing skepticism. You're increasing credibility. Let's take another example. This young lady just got out of a new car she was test driving, and she said, I like the car, but the wind noise is a little loud. What are your choices as a salesperson? Do you lean in and say, you'll get used to it? Or, that's just how cars sound these days. Or, if you get the premium stereo package, you won't even notice the sound. No, that is trying to overcome the objection. You're ignoring a point that is not going to go away for that audience. Instead, let's try something like this. Is noise an important factor for you? Let's take a look at the noise data I have on this vehicle so we can compare it with others. Okay, so what do we do there? Again, we validated and agreed with the objection. That could be important to them. Important like, that letter that Harry Potter was gonna get from those owls, and the owls kept trying to deliver the letter, and I think it was the aunt and the uncle in Harry Potter, they didn't want him to get the letter, and so they would throw it away. And one day the owls just said, okay, this message is gonna get through. So the letters kept pouring in. They poured into the fireplace and they were flying around everywhere. Harry Potter finally grabbed that letter, ran into his little room under the stairs and read it. The concerns of your audience are gonna come back just like this situation. The final tier of the new word order is context. Context before specifics. How many times have we heard the phrase,
taken out of context?
Scandal has been taken out of context.
Kremlin aide says this morning those words were taken out of context.
Truth is, it wasn't, because there was no context for it to be taken out of in the first place. When you leave context out, you're leaving the audience to interpret it any way that they want to. Context explains your actions. Take the airlines, for example. When they tell you to buckle your seatbelt or don't smoke in the lavatory or 13-year-olds can't be in the emergency row, we just accept that and we listen because that's the law. And they aren't really asking us now, are they? But when they ask us to clean up our trash, that's not mandatory. But why do we do it? Why do most of us do it? Because they gave us the context. Hey, we have a small crew that has to clean this entire plane, and sometimes it leads to delays. Additionally, if we had to bring on more crew to clean the plane, then your ticket cost would go up. You picking up trash actually makes you a savvy traveler. This is context. Context explains actions. It also provides perspective. Lastly, context sets proper expectations. Statistics, numbers, they are notoriously used out of context. Let's take 3 different clinical trials and you tell me, based on the facts, which one would you choose? Clinical trial number 1, patients were 300% more likely to die when taking the medication. Trial number 2, the death rate is 0.003%. Or trial number 3, 3 people died in the trial. Based on the information that you got, which trial would you feel most comfortable putting into the public's hands? Well, here's some news for you. It's the same exact trial. These are the same exact facts said 3 different ways. Without context, you don't have really much to grab onto. Now that you have the new word order, you know the formula for starting any conversation, for any discussion. You know how to engage the audience. Then you go with theirs before yours, right? Aikido style. And finally, before you get into any specifics, you give the context. Now that we've got that figured out, it's time for the 4 principles of credible communication. Be personal. You've got to personalize your message as a part of building trust. 3 ways to keep things personal is 1, make it relevant. You most likely care way more about your product or your idea than they do. Understand that and make sure what you're saying is relevant to them. Number 2, make it tangible. Would you rather know that there are 10,000 active taxi cabs in a city that you're visiting, or that the average wait time for a taxi is 2.5 minutes? The average wait time, right? Because it's something that you care about. You made it pertinent to your life and your situation, as opposed to just some random fact thrown out in space. Make yourself human. If you really want to connect with your audience, throw out cold, hard facts and skip the stories. That does it every time. And by does it every time, I mean, I'm just kidding. Flip that around. If you want to connect with your audience, you have to use stories and engaging comments and questions as opposed to throwing out cold, hard facts all the time. Now, I'm not saying facts are not useful at all, but the more you sound like fine print, the less people are going to trust you. Be plain spoken. It used to be that someone could dress up in a suit, use a bunch of big words, confuse us, and as long as they sounded confident, we would believe whatever they're saying and take that as truth. And that was the way you built credibility. Not anymore. We don't like big words. We don't like to be confused. And I'll leave you with this about being plain spoken. If they can't understand you, it's your fault. Be positive. Fear-based selling used to work really, really well. Over the years, fear-based selling has become less and less effective. Psychologists even have a term for this. It's called learned helplessness. They get so many negative messages thrown at them throughout the day, they just stop taking action. You need a more positive approach. Here are the key principles. Positive is not Pollyanna. Basically, you don't want to come up with a message that's too positive to be credible. I know that sounds weird, but we get skeptical when things are too good to be true, right? That's where that comes from, is you can be positive, but you don't want to be so positive that you're talking about something and people go, that's not it, right? Nah, I don't believe that. Too good to be true. So be mindful about that. Positive messaging is forward-looking. Specifically when you've done something wrong or the product is broken, don't dwell so much in the past about what happened. Focus on how you're going to fix the problem in the future, how you're going to make things better. Verizon Wireless used to have some issues, and they changed their slogan to Verizon Wireless, making progress every day. That was effective because people like to look forward. They like to look towards the future. And finally, being positive is for things, not against things. This means quit spending time focusing on your competitors, talking about how they don't do something or they can't do something or they're bad and you're good. Just focus on your value proposition. Stay away from the negative messaging. The fourth principle that I think is one of the most important principles is be plausible. The language of trust is based on the idea that people aren't perfect. And we know this. When something's too good to be true, perfect, or it seems unrealistic, we don't believe it. We see this in The Matrix Reloaded. The architect is explaining why he failed in the first version of The Matrix. Now, if you haven't seen The Matrix Reloaded, machines have taken over the world, captive humans are their source of energy, and they keep humans content by creating a false reality in their minds.
Failure. The inevitability of its doom is apparent to me now as a consequence of the imperfection inherent in every human being. Thus I redesigned it, based on your history, to more accurately reflect the varying grotesqueries of your nature.
Here are 4 rules for being plausible. Number 1, don't oversell. Stay away from all that crazy wording. It's insane, incredible. We're the best in breed. This is the best in class. You're not gonna find one better than. It's over the top. It's too much. We don't believe you anyway. Number 2, don't be extreme. And when I mean extreme, I mean polarizing. The only people that can get away with this are politicians. Democrats are way over here. Republicans way over here. You can't do that. Being plausible means find room for other answers. A good example of this is Progressive. Progressive Insurance allows you to go to their website and look at other rates. Why would they do that? Because they understand the psychology of a skeptical consumer. Number 4, acknowledge the flaws that everyone thinks exist anyway. Like Buick, we know you think we're an old person's car. We're working to change that, and their messaging, their marketing is driving that point home. The book also touched on the language of trust in the digital age. We're talking about the internet. We're talking about social media. And I can sum it up like this. Don't hide, provide. Don't hide. Like literally, when people are talking about you, your product, your service, don't hide. Get in there. Be part of the conversation wherever you can. Don't hide comments on your own website or comments about your own product. Yeah, you're gonna get some bad reviews. It's okay. Think about your own shopping experience. When you go on Amazon or somewhere else and you look at a product review, they all have negative reviews. Even the best products have negative reviews. Don't hide, provide. Provide what? Provide links. If there are other people talking about the same thing you are, link to them. You want to put the information on your website and also link so that they feel that you're not hiding anything. That goes a long way on the internet. Tons more about that. We can probably talk another 15 minutes about the internet alone. I'll leave you with this. You lead with trust, and that's how you sell your products and ideas. First, you have to engage them. Put their interests before yours, and always provide context before you get into the specifics. When you do get into the specifics, be personal, be plain spoken, be positive, and be plausible. You put all these concepts together and you have what is called the language of trust. I hope this was helpful for you. My name is John Guydon. This is Master the Book. All right, signing out.